Hello children. So once again I am back with a new video for you all, and it is based on earthquakes. And as I proceed with this, I want to remind you, do subscribe the channel, okay? And if you find this video helpful in your studies, which I know it is very helpful in your studies, so share the link of this video with your friends and classmates so that they can also get benefit of it. So let's continue with the topic. What is earthquake? First of all, you can see one picture in front of you, right? In this, an area has been shown, and within a minute you find this entire area gets destroyed, right? What is the reason behind it? The shaking of earth, okay, the tremors which we feel on the earth's surface. Okay, so let's discuss this topic. First of all, what is the definition of earthquake? How we can define it? Basically, it's the shaking of the earth, okay, shaking of the earth's surface caused by the release of energy waves as rocks in the earth's crust move suddenly. Any of the internal movements, it can be the movement of the plates, okay, the seismic plates, it can be the faulting, folding, whatever movement is there inside the earth, any such movement which causes the effect on the earth's surface in the form of shaking of the surface, that is actually the shaking of it is called the earthquake, right? Now, what is seismology? Seismology is the study of earthquakes, right? And naturally the people who do this study, the scientists who are involved in this type of study, they are called as seismologists, okay? Now, what is seismograph? You must have heard about this term many times. Seismograph, seismometer, these are actually the instruments, okay? These are the instruments used to measure the intensity of an earthquake, okay? The intensity of the earthquake, or you can say the seismic waves. To measure that, the seismograph or seismometer is used. Now the next term related to it is Richter scale. This also is a term which you must have heard many times. Whenever there is any earthquake anywhere in the world, you must have heard this, that on Richter scale, this earthquake was measuring 4.5 or 6.2, whatever. So what is Richter scale now? The Richter scale is actually, it's a scale on which the intensity of the tremors, okay, intensity of the tremors is measured on this particular scale, right? That means the magnitude of earthquake it has gone to what level? When we say it is 2.3 on Richter scale, that means its magnitude has been on the Richter scale, when we measure it, it has reached to 2.3 or 6.5 or whatever, right? So that is actually a scale, and which is used to measure the intensity or the magnitude of the tremors which are caused by the earthquake. Clear? Now, first thing comes in our mind is, where do these earthquakes occur? After all, what is the origin of it? Now, basically, if we study in detail all these things, we find that the earthquakes generally occur near the edges of the tectonic plates, or the margins where the two tectonic plates are meeting, right? That margin of the two tectonic plates, generally that is the region where most of the earthquakes are seen. Okay, so that is one region where it is found. Then when the tectonic plates can move towards each other, right? What happens, when the margins are there are basically three type of movements in the tectonic plates. Either they move towards each other, right? Or they may move away from each other, or simply the third movement is when they move very close to each other. So basically the movements, when the first two movements, when either they move towards each other or away from each other, in both these cases most of the earthquakes are caused. Okay, because some new landform is getting created, and whenever it happens, that means earthquake has to come. Now these movements create faults in the earth's crust, and a fault is the break, actually the fracture in the earth's crust, along which a huge block of earth's crust, either it slides down or it gets uplifted. So it is generally found, earthquake is generally found along the fault lines. This is actually the crack which develops, right, or the fracture which develops, that is called a fault. And along that fault line, or you can say the fault plane, the earthquakes are mostly seen. Now the next two terms come here are the epicenter and focus. Again, these two terms are related to the earthquake. Basically, deep inside the earth, when there is a point from where the seismic waves arise, okay, or you can say the point of origin of the seismic waves which cause then the earthquake, that point which is deep inside the earth, that point is called as the seismic focus. That is one point. Now what is epicenter? Epicenter is actually just vertically above that point on the earth's surface, is called the epicenter. It is vertically above the seismic focus, and the epicenter always lies on the earth's surface, and it is a point where the maximum destruction is caused. So epicenter is clear to you, and the focus basically it is also termed as hypocenter. So these are the two important terms which you should know. Now seismographs and the timing of the S and P waves, right, secondary and primary waves, can help to locate the epicenter actually and the focus of an earthquake. That means from where it has originated and which is the point exactly above it, okay, and which is the point of maximum destruction. So we can easily locate that on the earth's surface with the help of, one is seismographs, right, or the seismometers, and the timing, at what time the secondary waves and the primary waves are reaching. So according to that, when we study all these things in detail, we can tell about the point of origin of earthquake. Now what are these seismic waves? Many times we use this term, the seismic waves cause earthquake and all. What is it actually? These are the waves of energy, right, that are released during an earthquake, and these waves are able to travel through the earth's interior and along the earth's surface. These are the waves only which cause damage during an earthquake. Now how to locate an earthquake? In the earlier part I told you just now that the seismograph or seismometer can help a lot in locating an earthquake, right? And the same thing here again I'm going to tell you, the seismologists. Who are the seismologists? The people who study about the seismic waves or the seismic activities of the earth, okay, or the seismology. So these people, they use the seismographs as the basic instrument. Now let's move to the next topic, that is what causes earthquakes, what are the reasons behind causing earthquake. The most important reason what we have found is actually the tectonic movements, the plates movement, okay. As tectonic plates move along faults, stress builds up as the rocks get stuck together, right. This causes the rocks along the faults to change their shape or deform, and this elastic deformation leads to earthquake. Then rocks can stretch, but eventually they will unstick, or they just move away from each other, and as they move suddenly into a new position, results into earthquake. Then whenever the rocks move away from each other or they break, always it creates there is some release of energy from that, okay, and as it happens in the form of waves, and these are called the seismic waves, and these are only the seismic waves which cause the earthquake. Now the next thing is anatomy of an earthquake. Now what is anatomy? Anatomy means we have to study about each and every part or the details of it. right? The point of its origin, maximum destruction, and how it happens. All these things we have to study under this. Now an earthquake is actually the shaking of ground, right? And how it is caused? It is believed that it is caused by sudden motions along the faults or any fractures in the earth's crust. Now you can see here in front of you, the first point which is given here is the fault, right? Now what is fault? You can see very clearly here, there is you can say a fracture, right? A fracture is there on the earth's surface, and it goes deep inside, right? It continues till certain depth, right? So you can see a fracture in the rocks that make up the earth's crust. And along the faults only you will find maximum earthquakes are caused. Now what is epicenter? Another term is given here. Epicenter, a point on the earth's surface, just you can see vertically above the seismic focus. And what is this point? It is actually the point where maximum destruction is caused, because the reason is it is nearest to the point of origin of earthquake. So this is again one important point for you. Then next is focus. Focus is also called as seismic focus actually. It is also called as hypocenter. Now it is actually a point deep inside the earth where an earthquake rupture starts. Or you can say the seismic waves originate from there. So this is the third point. Fourth is the plates. You can see here. These are actually, it is believed that the entire earth, okay, on the entire surface of earth is divided into certain plates, major plates. Okay. So these are just the land masses. And if you see here, massive rocks that make up the outer layer of the earth's surface. And it is believed that it is the movement of these plates only which are behind the earthquake, which are the major factor which cause earthquake ultimately. And the next point which is given here is the seismic waves, right? Now what is seismic waves? What do you mean by this? Seismic wave. Seismic waves means these are the waves which originate, actually the vibration, okay, which cause the earthquake on the surface. So these waves are the waves that transmit the energy which is released by an earthquake on the surface. So this is all with the anatomy of an earthquake. Now let's talk about the two major waves which we are talking of again and again. One is primary waves, the other is secondary waves. Okay, these are actually the different types of seismic waves only. Primary waves, in short, these are also called as P waves. Secondary waves, in short, are also called as S waves. Okay. Now the next point for this, if we distinguish between the two, you will find the primary waves and secondary waves both are of very high frequency. But one thing you will find, the primary waves are generally the longitudinal waves, but as compared to that, the secondary waves are transverse waves. And the primary waves are also the short, these are also in the form of short wavelength, and secondary waves are also in the form of short wavelength. But one more major difference is that primary waves can pass through any matter, okay, solid, liquid and gases. But if we talk about the secondary waves or the S waves, these cannot move through the liquids. And that's why we many times when we study about the interiors of the earth, right, what are the different layers formed of and what is in what form these are present, there these secondary waves help a lot in understanding that where the rocks are present in their molten form, because that is the zone from where the secondary waves do not travel. Understood? Now next point is when the primary waves move forward and backward as it compressed and decompressed, right? As it is compressed and decompressed. Then in the case of secondary waves, it moves in all directions from their source. P waves, especially the primary waves, are the faster waves, or you can say the fastest among all the seismic waves. This is having the maximum speed. As compared to P waves, the S waves are slower. Okay, they have less speed than the P waves. So naturally, if we have anywhere the seismograph or seismometer to record the movement of seismic waves, always the P waves are reaching there first. So naturally, these are recorded first in the seismograph. And after the P waves, it is the second wave, that is S wave, which is recorded in the seismographs. Okay, so these are the basic differences between the two. Now, what can be the positive effects of an earthquake? First of all, the first point you should keep in mind is, before we discuss about any other positive effects, first thing you should understand is it releases the energy. Okay, through earthquake, actually the energy which is built up inside the earth is released. That is a very, very important positive effect of earthquake. Now next is, it increases the groundwater level. Underground water level, generally we call it by the name groundwater. So always whenever the earthquake occurs, it helps in increasing the level of the groundwater. So how it is helpful? When we have to take out the groundwater from inside the earth. So we always get help in this manner. Next is, it helps in formation of soil. The new landforms are formed. Then it helps in the formation of several minerals. Okay, so these are a few positive effects of earthquake. Now, what can be the negative effects of it? It is causing a lot of damage. Okay, it's you can say in the form of life and property, both ways. It causes a lot of destruction. Okay, so damage of human lives, or you can say all the living beings, and the damage of properties, deformation of ground surface, right? Then fire incidents can take place. Then several places you will find on the slopes of the mountains which are free of vegetation cover, they get easily actually the landslide chances are increased. Okay, now besides this, you will find the groundwater transformation is seen. Then tsunamis. Okay, tsunami, again, it is an important negative effect of earthquake. Then it can cause the sudden floods which are called as the flash floods, right? It can cause the change in the course of river. Suppose any river is flowing through one portion, it all of a sudden, because of the shaking of the earth, the course of the river changes from one to the other side, right? So again, in any of these forms, you will find the destruction is caused. Now, the major earthquakes, what we can trace, have been in these areas, right? In this map, you will find the important earthquakes, or you can say which were having the, you can say, high intensity, right? High magnitude. These were found in different parts in this manner. Now, if we observe the pattern, right? If we study about the pattern of these earthquakes where these have occurred, we can trace out that there are certain areas where these are very commonly experienced. Okay, and which are these areas? One is actually along the coast of Pacific Ocean, right? On both the sides, it is the same as the Pacific Ring of Fire, right? Circum-Pacific Ring of Fire. Number one. Number two is that mid-world mountain belt. Several such earthquakes have been actually experienced in these areas. So these are the major earthquakes we can trace. Now, what is the distribution of earthquake? In which areas we can find? On the basis of the map which I have shown you, it is very, very clear now which areas are important for the earthquakes. Now, on the basis of this distribution, which areas are important for the seismic activities? Let's see that. Now, basically, all over the world on the earth, there are three main regions where the distribution of earthquake can be seen maximum. Okay, all the earthquakes, if you see, leaving just a few, one or two here and there, otherwise maximum earthquakes are seen in the Circum-Pacific belt. Circum-Pacific belt, or it is also called as the Ring of Fire. So the entire coastal area of the Pacific Ocean. Number two, the second region is the Mid-Atlantic belt, which represents the earthquakes located along the mid-Atlantic ridge and its offshoots, right, near that. And number 3 is the mid-continental belt. It is representing epicenters located along the alpine Himalaya chains of Eurasia and Northern Africa. All these you'll find, and especially the East African fault zone. So all these regions come under the mid-continental belt of the earthquakes. Now these are associated with the weaker and isostatically disturbed areas of the globe. And if you see all these regions and you observe the earlier earthquakes, whatever have been there in the past, right, going through the earlier map of the distribution of earthquakes, you will find that these are found mostly in the zone of young fold mountains, right, or the zones of faulting and fractures wherever it is found, and the junction, or you can say the margins of the continental and oceanic plates, and the zones of active volcanoes. So these are the main areas in the entire world wherever the earthquakes are seen. Most of the earthquakes are limited to these areas only. Okay, now let's see the different belts of the distribution of earthquake. First one, which I mentioned just now in the earlier part, was the Circum-Pacific belt. It includes actually the epicenters of the coastal margins of North and South America and East Asia, and it represents the eastern western margins of the Pacific Ocean, right, and it accounts for about more than 65% of the total earthquakes of the world, and it represents 4 ideal conditions for the occurrence of earthquake. Let's see what 4 such conditions are there. Number 1 is that it is actually an area where the various continental and oceanic plates are having their margins. Okay, so it is the junction of that, number 1. Number 2 is that this is an area important for the zone of you can say the young fold mountains also. Then a number of active and dormant volcanoes are seen in the same belt, Circum-Pacific Ring of Fire. That's why it has got the name also, Ring of Fire. Okay, next is subduction zone of destructive and convergent plate boundaries is actually formed here. So all these points are important regarding the Circum-Pacific belt. Next, number 2, the region important for the distribution of earthquake is mid-continental belt. Now what is it? It is also known as Mediterranean belt or Alpine Himalayan belt, which represent the collision or subduction zones of continental plates. About 21%, and the earlier one it was 65%, okay, more than 65 you can say. And in this you will find almost 21% of the total seismic activities of the world are recorded in this belt. So this belt includes basically the epicenters of the alpine mountains and their offshoots in Europe, Mediterranean Sea, Northern Africa, okay, Eastern Africa, and even Himalayan mountains, Burmese hills. So all these are coming under this. The next one is Mid-Atlantic belt. It includes the epicenters located along Mid-Atlantic ridge. You all have studied about the Mid-Atlantic ridge, and it is lying almost in the center of the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, so when we talk about the Mid-Atlantic ridge, along that also you'll find several earthquakes actually such seismic activities are seen. Okay, and even in several islands which are near that ridge. Then this belt records moderate and shallow focus earthquakes due to the creation of transform faults and the fractures. So these are important regions for the distribution of earthquake. Now one more topic is there, that is the earthquake prediction. How can we predict about the earthquake, that in which area and when it is going to happen, right? So one thing I must say here, that in spite of all the developments whatever we have achieved, we cannot be very sure that when and at which place the earthquake will occur. Okay, so basically it is defined as the you can say the prediction is foretelling, or you can say when we say that in which area this particular thing is going to happen. So regarding earthquake, we get some evidences when we relate it with the certain such things which have been actually observed by the people since long time. Okay, like the unusual animal behavior. This was actually being observed by the people long back also, and on the basis of that they used to say that something is going to happen, right? So that is one thing. Number two is that water level in wells. Wells, what we use for taking out water. Now in wells, all of a sudden the water goes up and down. So that is actually the change in the water level. That actually is one of the indications of it, that something is going to happen in the nearby area. And next is large scale of fluctuation of oil flow from the oil wells. Again, then the next thing, foreshocks or the minor shocks before major earthquakes, like several tremors are experienced in any region. So that is generally taken as like these are the foreshocks, right? Before any such major earthquake which may come in the near future. Okay, but still again I must tell you that we cannot be very sure that that major earthquake will happen at what time. Understood? So this is one point. The next is temperature change. All of a sudden the temperature changes, right? Uplifting of the earth's surface, change in seismic wave velocity. Then the hot spring and geysers where we find in those areas, all of a sudden the hot springs get vanished and again the water comes up on the surface. So these are actually a few peculiar things which we feel that these are somewhere related with the occurrence of earthquake. And this is how we can say anything about the earthquake. But we cannot be again very sure about it, right? Now next is the effect of earthquake. What can be the effects of this type of movement? Loss of life and property, number one. Number two is that the damage to transport system, or you can say various infrastructure. Okay, the bridges are destroyed and the rail tracks are totally destroyed, they get damaged. Then airports, highways, all these are affected by that. Damage to infrastructure, then chances of floods develop because of this. Okay, because the floods also, flash floods especially, because several times when we are having several reservoirs along with the dams, right, reservoirs are holding a lot of water within them, and their walls are very, you can say that very strong, and just because of the earthquake it may happen that any crack develops in that wall, and ultimately because of the pressure of water it may break. So it may cause the flash floods in the nearby area. Then chances of fire and short circuits also are seen a lot in those areas. Then communications such as telephone wires and several pipelines like the water pipes or the sewer, or you can say the gas pipelines get damaged. So that may have several other effects. Then economic activities like agriculture, industry, trade, transport are all severely affected by this. Now precautionary, if you say earthquake safety rules, several things are there which we should keep in mind. This is something extra I'm telling you here, like if you are in house, right? So what to do and what not to do. Don't use any lift for getting down from the buildings. Okay, this is one thing you should keep in mind. Then be prepared to move with your family. Move where? Move somewhere out of the buildings. Then if you are in a shop or a school or office, then what can you do? Don't run for an exit. Okay, take cover under a desk or table. Generally under the table if you are there. Now you will save at least your head, right? That is why it is suggested. Then move away from the window glasses, right? And then do not go near electric points and cables. So these are a few things which you should keep in mind. If you are outside, suppose, so you should avoid high buildings. You should not go close to it, or the walls or power lines and other objects that could fall and create a blockage in front of you. So don't run through streets. If possible, move on to an open area away from you can say the high buildings and the trees and all. And if you are in a vehicle, stop in a safe open place. Remain inside the vehicle. Close window, doors and vents. Now after the earthquake, what precautions you should take? Again, 1 minute, I will explain that. You should keep calm, right? Whatever has happened, you should keep yourself calm. Switch on the transistor and radios and obey the instructions which are being given by the authorities. Keep away from beaches and low banks of river. A huge wave may sweep in. That means the tsunamis can be created because of that. Then do not re-enter the badly damaged buildings to search for anything. Be away from that and do not go near damaged structures. Turn off the water, gas and electricity connections. Do not smoke. Do not light match or use a cigarette lighter because it can again cause some accidents. Do not turn on switches. There may be gas leak or short circuits. Then if there is any fire, try to put it out or call fire brigade. Okay, these are a few points you should keep in mind. Right? Now, this is one of the pictures which you can see what happens when an earthquake occurs in an area, right? And again, children, it depends on the intensity or the magnitude of the earthquake. This is actually one picture of the Latur earthquake which was there in 1993. Now, next is one of the very destructive effects of earthquake is the tsunami. Very high waves are caused by the earthquake, right? Now, what is a tsunami? It is a series of water waves, caused by the displacement of a large volume of body of water, usually an ocean. And on the sea floor, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes and even landslides can lead to tsunamis. Whenever there is a vibration and the sea floor is getting affected by that, it will cause tsunami. And tsunamis can travel over 300 miles per hour. And these are huge waves, and it can have an amplitude of up to 32 feet, right? And the most vulnerable place in the world we generally consider is actually Hawaiian Islands. That is, most of the times it has been hit by tsunamis. Okay, now I'm going to show you a little, you can say, short video of it, right? Explaining how the earthquake occurs. This is how it happens. Okay. The shaking is there, and you can see a huge landmass has got uplifted, and the water in the ocean is getting totally affected by that. Right? You can see the very high waves which are caused because of this. And as it comes, immediately you will find this type of effect. Okay, from one side of the beach you will find the water goes away towards the ocean, and it is going to cause tsunami on the other end of the ocean. Okay, now you can see within a few seconds what is the next effect of it. As the water goes back, within a few seconds you can see now this area, the entire coastal area, is hit by very high waves, and this is it. This is actually tsunami, right? So tsunamis are very high waves, and always it is caused by the seismic waves, and it causes a lot of destruction in the area. Okay, so this is all with the earthquakes topic, children. I hope this entire topic is now very, very clear to you all. And before I leave, I must remind you once again, don't forget to subscribe the channel and also share the link of the video with your friends and classmates. Okay, so see you soon in the next video. Till then, bye.